One of the most dangerous things in Africa today is to declare that you are going to fight against corruption, even if you are the president.
You know, for them, once the pocket is full, for them, the rest of the country, their own people can go to hell. That's what we see around.
The biggest problem is corruption.
If you are honest, the system works against you.
Integrity, transparency, and fight against corruption should be part of the culture. They have to be taught as fundamental values. You have to be conscious that you can change a corrupt system. Welcome back to another episode of Today in History, and in studio today I have Professor P.L.O Lumumba, and the theme of discussion is corruption. So welcome, join us, let's do this together. Can you please define corruption for us, if you don't mind?
You all know what corruption is. If you are traveling on the road and you give money to a police officer to avoid prosecution, that is petty corruption. If you are in public office and you use public office for private gain, we know that is corruption. So it is an attempt to give a veneer of legality to corruption, that we pretend that we do not know what corruption is, but we do. And we know who are thieves, even in our traditional societies. So those who engage in stealing what that does not belong to them are engaging in corruption. And I've taken the view that in many African countries we pretend not to know the obvious because we have embraced things that undermine our very being as Africans.
All right, thank you so much for your definition. Do you think that we can create more functional institutions that can help us fight against corruption?
In many African countries, we create institutions, but we don't intend to have those institutions do anything. We think, for example, many African countries are signatories to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption and the African Convention for the Prevention and Combating Corruption. But what we do is to simply sign those documents, but we don't believe in them. We don't believe in them. And when one is appointed into office, one is supposed to earn one's salary, one is supposed to appear to fight petty corruption. But when you begin to attack corruption where it hurts most, particularly amongst the political class, then they say, this man is now going too far. He's coming too close to us. And the net effect, therefore, is that we corrupt our entire political system. And one of the most important things that we must know, as long as the political system is corrupt, a country can never be liberated from corruption. I give a number of examples. In the recent past, we have heard about the Panama Papers, and the Icelandic Prime Minister resigned on the ground only that there were allegations that he was named as one of the individuals. Contrast that with South Africa, where there is a finding that the president is engaged in activities which amount to corruption, and the president sees nothing wrong with it, and his supporters see nothing wrong with it. I give the South African example because it has been quite prominent. But you can talk about almost all African countries with few exceptions. And that is why Africa continues to punch below our economic and political weight, because we have a bunch of thieves in charge of our national resources.
All right, there have been African political leaders who have been at the forefront fighting the war against corruption. And for instance, I can give an example of John Pombe Magufuli. Do you think there are other African political leaders who have done the same? And if so, have they been successful in the fight against corruption?
Even before Joseph Magufuli, we have President Ian Khama of Botswana. The Botswana have been leading in the fight against corruption. And if you go to Botswana, you are able to see that when a country and its leaders choose the path of rectitude, then the country realizes her potential. We can also talk about the retired President Hifikepunye Pohamba of Namibia, who during his tenure was in the forefront in the fight against corruption. And much more recently, everybody has been enamored by the energy and the enthusiasm with which President Magufuli has declared the fight against corruption. One of the most dangerous things in Africa today is to declare that you are going to fight against corruption. Even if you are the president, there will be no shortage of individuals who want to liquidate you and to eliminate you altogether, because corruption is a big industry. People pay school fees, people enjoy good life on the basis of corruption. So that those who have declared themselves to be in the forefront against corruption, like President Magufuli and
Okay, then let's talk about corruption and ethnicity. Do you think that there is a correlation between corruption and ethnicity? What do you have to say?
There is a sense in which in many African countries we have even ethnicized corruption. So that if an individual who is corrupt is arrested in a multi-ethnic country such as Nigeria or Kenya or the Democratic Republic of Congo, he or she will recruit people from their ethnic group and say that he is a thief, but he is our thief. So that there is a sense in which if we are to fight corruption successfully, the political leadership in Africa must, in the nature of things, demonstrate that impunity will not be tolerated. And I think it is not going to be easy, but it can be done.
So tell us, why do you think that it's not going to be easy to fight the war against corruption? I believe if we all unite, we can do it, we can make it happen. What do you have to say?
It is not going to be easy, but it can be done, because the dividends of a corruptless society are so obvious that if we don't embrace them and understand them, then we are not getting the right thing. But it's not going to be easy. The truth is that thieves are thieves. If you start with one political party, then that is the beginning. You must start somewhere. And this idea of apportioning political blame to one side and saying that it is only one side of the political divide that is being dealt with is not an issue. The question that we must ask is a basic question. Have you been engaged in corrupt activities? We investigate you in accordance with the law, and if we find you to be culpable, then you are dealt with in accordance with the law. It is also incumbent on those who are in political power to ensure that nobody is treated as a sacred cow. One of the things that we must note about African countries is that African countries are very fragile. We may talk about democracy, but in a country such as Nigeria, which is multi-ethnic, we may deny it all we want, but there are still Igbos, there are still Yorubas, there are still Ibibios. In Kenya, whether we like it or not, there are still Kambas, there are still Kikuyus, and that is the reality of Africa. And it is a reality which cannot be ignored, because we are still in the process of trying to create and strengthen the states, and one has to be sensitive therefore.